uh, somewhere in a life that looks nothing like yours from the outside, a life with more visibility, more demands, more eyes on it than most people will ever experience. Someone is sitting with a feeling that has absolutely nothing to do with any of that. A feeling that exists in the private interior of a person who has learned out of pure necessity to keep their private interior extremely well protected. A feeling that has your name on it, that has had your name on it for longer than they have been comfortable admitting even to themselves. And that is, as of right now, becoming impossible to keep private any longer. The high profile person this reading is about is not high profile to you in the way they might be to the outside world. To you, they are a person, specific, human, complicated in the ways that all people are complicated beneath the surface of whatever they present publicly. But their particular position, the visibility that comes with it, the scrutiny, the constant awareness of being observed and evaluated and having their choices mean something beyond the personal has created in them a relationship with their own feelings that is more guarded than most, more practiced in containment, more skilled at the performance of composure in moments when composure is the last thing they actually feel. And right now, in the private space, beneath all of that composure, what they feel is you. Subscribe to this channel and drop the word confession in the comments right now if something in those opening words landed somewhere real. Because what is coming from this person is exactly what that word suggests: a confession, the specific, vulnerable, I have been holding this and I can no longer hold it kind of truth telling that a person of their particular position does not offer lightly, does not offer, in fact, to almost anyone, and they are preparing to offer it to you. Let me tell you about the particular challenge that someone in this person's position faces when it comes to genuine feeling, because understanding it will completely reframe what their confession means and why its arrival is as significant as it is. When you live a life with a certain degree of visibility, when your choices, your associations, your emotional expressions are observed and interpreted and sometimes amplified beyond anything you intended, you learn very quickly to create distance between what you feel and what you show. Not because you are inauthentic, because self preservation in a high visibility life requires a degree of emotional management that most people never have to develop. The cost of showing the wrong feeling in the wrong moment is simply higher when more people are watching. The risk of vulnerability is simply greater when vulnerability can be witnessed, recorded, replayed, interpreted by people who have no relationship with you and no stake in your well being. What this produces over time is a very specific kind of loneliness. The loneliness of someone who is surrounded by people and almost never truly seen by any of them, who has learned to be in rooms full of people while keeping the room inside themselves almost entirely private, who has perhaps almost forgotten what it feels like to be with someone who knows them rather than knows of them, who experiences connection most frequently as performance and has nearly stopped expecting to find the real thing. And then they found you, or rather, they found that you were different, that something in how you engaged with them in how you saw them, in what you responded to, and what you didn't, in the specific quality of your attention operated outside the patterns they had learned to expect. You were not responding to the public version of them. You were somehow responding to something closer to the actual person. And that the experience of being responded to as an actual person rather than as a position or a reputation or a carefully constructed public self is something they had stopped believing they could have. They have not stopped believing it anymore. You changed that. I want to describe what has been happening in them since they began to understand what you mean to them, because this has not been a simple or comfortable internal process. This has been a journey with its own particular challenges, its own resistance, its own moments of almost and then pulling back. And understanding the journey will tell you everything you need to know about the quality and the seriousness of what is coming. The first thing that happened was recognition. A moment probably early in your connection, possibly so early that neither of you could have named it at the time, where something in them registered you as significant. Not just interesting or appealing or worth knowing, significant in the specific way of something that is going to matter, something that is not going to be easy to categorize and set aside, something that is going to require a response that they are not yet sure they know how to give. That recognition was followed by resistance, because recognition of this kind in a life structured around careful self protection is not simply welcomed, it is also feared. The more something matters, the greater the risk of its loss. The deeper the potential connection, the greater the potential exposure. And someone who has learned to equate exposure with vulnerability and vulnerability with danger does not simply open to significant feeling without an internal struggle. The resistance lasted a while. It expressed itself in ways that may have been slightly confusing from your end, moments of warmth followed by moments of withdrawal, approach followed by careful distance, the particular push-pull of someone who wants something and is simultaneously afraid of how much they want it. If you notice that inconsistency, if it puzzled you or created uncertainty in you about where you actually stood, I want to name clearly that it was never about you not being enough. It was always about them being temporarily overwhelmed by how much you were. And this is the part that these cards are showing me with the most clarity and the most force. The resistance gave way, not dramatically, not in a single moment of decision, but in the gradual, inevitable way of something that simply could not be sustained indefinitely against the weight of what was true. The resistance exhausted itself. The feeling outlasted every attempt to contain it. And what remains now on the other side of that long internal battle is something that is finished fighting against itself and is finally ready to move. What moves is toward you fully, with everything they have been holding back through all the months of resistance finally released and given direction. Now, I need to speak to something specific about how you receive this when it arrives. Because receiving something from a person in this position, from someone whose public life creates a particular kind of complexity around everything they do, is going to require something specific from you that I want to name. Clearly, do not be dazzled by the position. That is the instruction. And I do not mean that dismissively, I mean it practically. Because there is a very human tendency when someone with a certain visibility or status offers you their genuine feeling to relate to the feeling through the lens of that status, to be moved by who they are in the world rather than by what they are bringing to you as a person, and relating to the feeling through that lens is a mistake that would diminish both of you. What they are bringing you is not a gift from a high profile person to an ordinary person. What they are bringing you is one human being's genuine, fought for, hard won feeling for another human being. The position is irrelevant to the feeling. The feeling is the same as it would be if they lived a completely private life. And what it deserves from you is the same response any genuine human feeling deserves: presence, honesty, the real version of you, rather than the version of you that is responding to the idea of them. Be yourself in this completely. The full, unedited, completely authentic version that has already, without you trying, produced in them the feeling they are about to confess. That version of you is what they want, not a version adjusted to the context of who they are publicly, the actual you. Bring that. The second thing I want to say about receiving this is simpler and perhaps more important. Let yourself be moved. Whatever you feel when this arrives, whatever surfaces in you in the moment of receiving a confession of this weight and this seriousness from this specific person, let it be felt. Do not compress it into something more manageable. Do not perform equilibrium when you do not feel equilibrium. Do not protect yourself from the full experience of this moment by staying at a slight remove from it. Be in it completely and without reservation, because this kind of moment, a person of this particular interior depth and exterior complexity, finally finding someone they trust enough to be fully honest with, finally saying the thing they have never quite been able to say. This kind of moment deserves a witness, and you are the witness. Be present for it. Let me tell you what the confession itself is going to contain, because it is not going to be a simple or single layered thing. It is going to have depth to it, the depth of something that has been developing for a long time and has accumulated substance along the way. The first layer is the basic truth of it, that they want you specifically, consistently, with a clarity that has survived every attempt to redirect or diminish it. This layer will probably come first, and it will be direct in a way that surprises you, given how carefully they usually manage their expressions. Direct, because directness, after all the internal circling, is actually the easiest thing. After this much time spent managing what they feel, saying it plainly turns out to be a relief. The second layer is the context. Why you, what it is about you specifically that produced this feeling in someone who has encountered many people and been genuinely affected by very few. This layer will be more personal and more revelatory than the first. Not just, I feel this, but here is what in you called it out of me. Here is what you showed me about yourself that I did not expect. Here is the specific thing you did or said or simply were that made it impossible to continue pretending this was something I could manage. That specific accounting, the here is exactly what you did to me quality of it, is going to be the part that stays with you longest, that you replay in quiet moments. That tells you something about yourself that you did not previously see clearly. The third layer is the ask, what they want to happen next, where they hope this leads. And I want to prepare you for the fact that what they ask for is not small. This is not someone looking for something undefined and convenient. This is someone who has thought about this seriously enough for long enough to know what they actually want, and what they want is real, is forward looking, is built on the understanding of who you are that they have developed through all the time of watching and feeling and resisting and finally accepting. They want you in their life in a way that matters, that is built on honesty rather than managed distance, that is allowed to grow into what it is naturally capable of becoming rather than kept artificially contained by caution or circumstance or the particular demands of a life lived more publicly than most. What becomes possible if you receive this openly, if you meet the confession with your own honesty rather than with careful, measured, Virgo typical management is something I want to describe in full because it is genuinely worth sitting with. What becomes possible is a connection that operates as a genuine refuge for both of you. For them, from the exhausting performance of public life, the constant management of perception, the loneliness of almost never being in a space where full honesty is possible. For you, from the particular weariness of being underestimated, of offering depth and having it received at surface level, of being in connections that never quite met you at the place where you actually live. This person meets you there at the place where you actually live. And that meeting two people who both live at significant depth, finally being in the same interior space together, has the quality of something that both of you have wanted for longer than you've been willing to admit. What becomes possible is being loved in a way that sees you fully, not the public version of you, not the curated, composed, appropriately self managed Virgo who shows up in most contexts, the whole version, the one with all the layers and the richness and the occasional intensity that is simply too much for people who are not built to hold that much reality. This person is built to hold it. Their own depth, the private interior that the public life obscures, has the capacity to meet yours without being overwhelmed by it. What becomes possible underneath everything else is simply this: being known, really known, by someone who has the intelligence to understand you and the depth to appreciate what they understand, and the courage, hard won, seriously developed courage to finally say so out loud. That is what is coming toward you. There is one last thing, and it is the thing I feel most strongly as we close this reading. The most important thing I could say to you as you prepare to receive what this person is bringing. You have been underestimated in your romantic life, repeatedly, possibly consistently, in ways that have accumulated over time into a quiet but persistent doubt about whether the full depth of who you are is actually something that can be met, whether someone actually exists who is capable of seeing all of it and wanting all of it and staying in the presence of all of it without eventually needing you to be smaller or simpler or more convenient than you are. The answer is yes. The answer has always been yes. And it is about to arrive dressed in the particular form of a high-profile person who has fought their own considerable resistance to get to the place of being ready to say so. Let it be the answer. Let it close the doubt. Not because this person is high profile and therefore their feeling validates you. You have never needed external validation to be valid. But because they are genuine, because what they feel has been tested by time and resistance and the full complexity of who they are, because their confession when it arrives, is going to be one of the most real things anyone has ever offered you. Receive it as the real thing it is. And then let yourself imagine fully without the protective ceiling of this probably won't work or this is probably too good, what a life looks like with someone in it who finally, completely, without reservation, sees you. That life is closer than you think. Tell me in the comments, did someone specific come to mind? Someone whose position in your world makes the idea of their genuine feeling feel slightly unbelievable, even as something in you has been sensing it. Drop confession if this reading found you somewhere real. Tell me what resonated. Tell me if the push pull I described matched something you've been experiencing and not fully understanding, because you have been understanding it correctly all along. You always do, with everything, Virgo. I'll see you in the next one.